What is up YouTube, and today we have the balance adjustment preview that is coming to the game on the 12th of September, and this patch has some pretty juicy changes, some pretty useless changes, and we'll talk about that. But you'll see that this change will affect many Moonlight 5 stars as well as some RGB 5 stars which have been out of the meta. So for example, here we have Judge Kisei, Lionheart, Cermia, and Pirate Captain Flan. All three of these units haven't really seen that much play because of the current metagame. Hopefully they get changes that will actually help them be playable. I don't think they'll be playable after these changes. We'll talk about that after we talk about the buffs. We also have Abigail and Valencia for RGB 5 stars, ML Acades, and some artifacts getting changed as well for the better. So the first unit being changed for I think like the third or fourth time is Judge Kisei. And Judge Kisei, they really want to make her work. I don't know why, maybe because she's like the poster child of Epic 7 along with Luna. But basically, they're changing her S3 once again. They're keeping the full dispel, but they're also adding this decreased hit chance, and they're also making it so that instead of putting this, unable to counterattack buff, they're just making it so that, she cannot trigger counterattacks. Also giving her the CR push and giving her ignore effect resist. So they're giving her the whole shebang. They're giving her basically everything you want in an S3 as an opener. Only problem is, she still struggles to be built because you need to build her very fast and you also want her on high damage. And I can see this work with like Frida, right? If you bring her with Frida and then you have her against the Bellion, you can defense break the entire enemy team. But the only problem is, I don't know why still, this defense break is still 75%. So yeah, not too sure about that. Maybe this gets boosted to 100% with skill enhances. But yeah, even so, I think this unit will still be very niche. You can't really build her into like an RTA team. You'll have to bring her into an arena offense, and you'll probably have to pair her with like a Frida like I mentioned, or just another cleave team. And you'll also see that her S2 damage is being buffed, and yeah, pretty much how it is. She also gets invincibility still, but the damage is just being buffed now. It used to scale with the amount of enemies, now it's just flat increased damage. I think this will allow her to be played in some cleave comps, but honestly, I don't know why you'd still play her. You might as well bring like a different unit that can defense break, that can also buff your team, like a Flan, and you'll be way better off. But yeah, she 100% relies on a soul burn for sure now. She did before anyways, and I think they're trying to make her into a hybrid opener cleave unit, but I don't really know if it'll work. Next, we have Lionheart Cermia. So Lionheart Cermia is getting fully revamped. I'd say fully revamped because they're completely removing her fighting spirit system. She has 0 fighting spirit now. The way she actually works is that she will actually proc her S2, and what that does is she will actually do the same thing, cleanse herself, also give increased defense and effect resist, and also CR push herself as well, of course, but also reset skill cooldown, and her S3 will start with a 4-turn cooldown now. And you'll see that it'll begin the battle with full cooldown count, and by proccing your S2, you will actually fully reset it. So it's basically the same functionality. The reason why they're doing this though is because they want her to be used more against ML Politist, who stops fighting spirit gain. And sure, that might work, but I think the problem with Lionheart Cermia is mostly going to be, just the fact that she cannot really proc this S2 without getting punished heavily right now. We have like Green Celine and stuff like that can really punish her. I think this will increase her usability for sure, but I don't know if this will make her super strong, just because of the fact that, if you don't proc her S2, her S3 hits like a wet noodle. The reason why they did this is because, this way you can actually S3 without having to always proc your S2. So I think this makes it so that, sure, she can be used more, but you still really need to bring her into a team comp that actually procs her S2 through extra attacks, counter attacks, or dual attacks, because without this defense buff on her, her S2 just hit, or her S3 hits pretty light. So you still need to use her the same. Now you can just bring her into ML Politics. That's pretty much it. Next, they're changing ML Flan. Now, I'm not really too sure about this change. I don't really know if it's a buff. Basically, they're changing the Steel 1 buff to a defense break now, and the extra turn soul burn is being changed to a longer defense buff with a higher effect chance, which is okay, it's a nice change, but her S2 is being changed pretty heavily. So instead of increased effectiveness, which is pretty weird to change, they're giving her crit hit resistance, and they're removing the fact that she actually redirects damage now. And I think just this change itself is just weird because Pirate Captain Flan is being built nowadays on full effectiveness, like super high effectiveness, and by actually giving her more bulk, and lowering the effectiveness that she gets, I don't really think that's a buff, right? Honestly, this crit resistance is actually not as good as this damage redirect, because usually you bring her into like full tanky teams anyways, or with full tanky teams, so you have someone to soak the damage for her. So I'm just not really happy about this change, because to make Pirate Captain Flan work, guys, you need like a ton of effectiveness, like literally like 250% to lock down like knights and stuff like that, and just like any bruiser. And with this change, it makes it so that she might be tankier, but there's RNG now in the fact that she's tanky, and also she's just going to be harder to build now. And they actually changed her secondary, effect on this. It used to be when you actually S1, if you have a buff, you'll activate Hunt. That's an AoE CR push by 15%, which was very, very nice. But now it's going to be if the buff or enemy has a buff after using a skill, you'll activate Time to Pillage. This has a 3-turn cooldown now, and Time to Pillage is just going to be a effectiveness boost to all your allies, and also after attacking, you'll steal a buff from the target. I don't really think this is as strong as the CR push, and I guess they did move the effectiveness into this Time to Pillage, but I just kind of like this flat effectiveness way more, right? Because you can literally stun someone at the start of battle with your S1, and when I say stun, I mean with Summertime Series artifact. But yeah, pretty interesting change. Not really too sure how to think about it. Next, we have Abigail being changed. This is a straight up buff. Basically, now when you proc her passive where the ally in the back row takes lethal damage, you'll actually dispel all debuffs from them as well, which is very nice. And also her S3 gets increased effectiveness, so just a straight up boost to her kit, no really drawbacks. I think she's a pretty strong unit already for Guild Wars offense. You can pick her in RTA, she's solid as a niche pick. Even into like Navy Captain Landies and any stealth units that are very annoying. So I think she's a pretty solid pick now, and she definitely deserved the buff. I think there's other units that needed a buff before her, but Abigail was definitely a fun unit to use, and I'm happy she got a buff. Next, we have Valencia. So I think this is the biggest buff of the patch, actually. Now, I'm a big Valencia fanboy, so you guys might think I'm biased, but I think this will make her pretty good. And that's because you'll see that if you look at her S1 now, it's a defense break, right? Before, the Soul Burn was a effect chance to 100% and defense break for 2 turns. Now it's still the same, effect chance to 100%, but instead of that 2-turn defense break, you ignore effect resistance. And we all know how hard Valencia hits if you build her very well. So if you ignore effect resistance and you actually land this on like a Soul Weaver or a very tanky knight, and you also factor in the fact that you usually put her on injury set, you can do a ton of damage while doing a ton of injury. So I think this will make her pretty good and pretty strong. The S2 is also being changed as well. You're getting increased crit chance, which will make her even easier to build. The hardest thing about Valencia to build was her crit chance for sure. And also you'll see that they're moving some of the exclusive equipment effects into her S2 just straight up. For example, the increased CR. And you'll also see Mind's Eye will actually, instead of giving you effectiveness now, you're going to actually get that injury built in. So yeah, basically just a straight up buff. She's losing some effectiveness, but that doesn't really matter too much because of the fact that, now she's just going to do a ton more damage and will be able to ignore effect resist if you soul burn it for only 10 souls. So I think this will make her super strong into the current meta with a lot of tanky health scaling units. Also, you're going to see that her S3 is getting buffed as well. It's going to be a CR pushback by 20% if you have this exclusive equipment. I don't know if you'll take this over the health back from the S1 or the damage they'll increase of Mind's Eye, but I think this is a very solid option now, right? AoE CR pushback by 20% is insane, so you definitely have to consider taking this now because it's just going to be super strong. We have ML Acades also being changed, nothing too crazy. Instead of 2 random buffs on her skill 3, I think this is skill 3, right? It might be her skill 2. Now you give her attack buff, now you give attack buff, which will make those niche immortality comps with like Fire Kayron and stuff like that, and even like ML Kayron just that much more annoying. So it's a very good buff for those annoying team comps. Not excited to see them in action though. And then we have some artifacts being buffed. Other World Elite Machinery also giving you crit chance now. It'll make building your SSB Wyvern one-shot teams easier if you don't have Drink, because you can use this artifact instead. And you'll also see Fan of Light and Dark, which was used sometimes. It's getting buffed as well. After using a non-attack skill twice, you'll increase combat readiness and have a 50 to 100% chance to increase critical hit damage now instead of 35 to 70, which made no sense to have, right? So if you are in a mid player, this is a buff to you. So these are the changes coming to the game on 9/12, September 12th. I think the changes overall are just like whatever. I think the only one that really matters is Valencia, because it's a pretty strong buff, right, with that ignore effect resist. and also Pirate Captain Flan, because I honestly think that this is somewhat of a nerf. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you're most excited for, and I'll see you guys next video.